Ready?
Yeah. I'm John R. May, born in 1944, February of 1944, and I went in the military in 1964 on, I think it might have been
June.
in May or June.
June of 64.
Yeah, because it's just about my anniversary. And the reason I went in, my wife said she wanted to move. She wanted to get away from everybody up here. So I asked her if Fort Knox, Kentucky was far enough to start with, and she said yes. We moved to Fort Knox, Kentucky. Yeah, not during basic. She didn't go down there when I was in basic, but after I got out, we moved to Fort Benning, Georgia. I was supposed to be a wheeled vehicle diesel mechanic, but the only thing I ever seen was semi-trailers, and I'd pull and replace the wheel bearings. Finally, I asked the first sergeant one day, I said, "Is this really fair?" He asked me what. I said, "I gave you 3 years of my life. You supposedly gave me a chance to make a career for myself. I wanted to be a diesel mechanic, and all I've done is pull and replace wheel bearings." He says, "I'll see what I can do." 3 weeks later, he came to me, he says, "Hey, how far away do you want to go?" I says, "I don't care, as long as it's got something to do with engines and not wheels." He said that my orders came in, and I was going to Hanau, Germany. So that was my next move. I went to Hanau, Germany, went over on a ship called the Patch. And right away, that worried me. I don't like that much water all at one time anyhow. And when you can't see land nowhere and they tell you you're on a patch, and then somebody says, "You know why they call this a patch?" It's just because it's full of patches. So that trip was nerve-wracking. I landed in Germany, a place called Hamburg, Germany. Then I got on a train, and I took a train to Frankfurt, Germany. And from Frankfurt, they picked us up with a bus and took us to Hanau. I was stationed at
Pioneer Concern
at Hanau, Germany, in a float bridge engineers.
Oh, okay. Just
About 6 months later, my wife flew over on a Lufthansa, and about 9 months, a little more than that, my daughter was born in Frankfurt, Germany. So it gives you a pretty good idea how long a pregnancy is.
oh, jeez.
But we...
What did you do in Germany?
Pardon?
What did you do in Germany?
I built bridges over the Rhine River.
Cool.
We had what they called...
When did you drive the captain? Didn't you drive
I started out, yeah. When you first get there, you're living on the Concern, and then after my wife come over, we moved off post in Hanau, which is a difficult thing to do for anybody that's been in the military. They understand. A private with his wife living off post in them times, $117 don't go very far every month.
How'd you manage to pay your rent?
Government was good enough to give me all these, they call C rations, for cigarettes and coffee, tea, liquor. And my landlord was a shoemaker, and he had a black market going. And I'm not ashamed of it. I did what I had to do to live over there, and there was nothing to be ashamed of.
We did the same thing.
And we had a good time. We used to go for entertainment. We'd go out to the base and go to the movies for 10 cents. And our friends and us, everybody, this guy where we rented, this shoemaker, he had, I think, 7 or 9 apartments.
Oh, wow.
And he had a little outdoor swimming pool, and we had a neat little place. But I say little because we never even had a kitchen sink. We had a table fit for 2, and when you got done eating, you got up, you grabbed the table, the handles, and pulled on them. It looked like a drawer, and it just pulled out, and there was 2 holes with 2 tins in it, dish pans. So you didn't have to carry the dishes, you just scraped them off the table into the pan. And shared the bathroom,
What's the name?
just
The neighbor?
just the stool. But after our daughter came, that made everything better. We enjoyed life over there. The only bad part I know have to say about the service was they lied to me. They told me when my tour because my tour in Europe was only 24 months because I was a married man.
Okay.
So when my tour got close to being over and it was time to rotate, they came to me and says, "Hey, John, I got a proposition for you." I said, "What's that?" And by this time I had moved up rank because rank was fast over there. They had what they call blood stripes. If somebody doing the same job that you do was to leave, rotate, to get out, then you automatically stepped up in his position
Okay.
and you got promoted 1 rank.
Okay.
Well, I made E5 real quick.
Okay.
And what I want to say, drove the captain around at first down in the motor pool. That was my job, which I liked because it made me exempt from KP. And after I did that for quite a few months, then I asked the captain one day when we was out riding, and I said, I gave 3 years of my life to try to learn how to be a diesel mechanic, and I've never touched an engine. And he said, "What are you telling me?" And he said, "I'm telling you, I think I'm wasting my life if I don't go ahead and get some training here." So he says, "Well, you take care of that."
Never happened.
And that never happened. And then when these guys came to me when it was time for me to rotate, they gave me a proposition. They said that if I liked it here, they would make it possible that I could spend the rest of my time in Germany instead of coming back to the States, then having to rotate to some other place again. But that wasn't a big headache because I was an E5, so the government had to pay for everything they did to me.
Okay.
If they moved me, they had to pay for it. And so I told them, yeah. I said, I like it over here. People are nice, the country's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a little moonshining job going on there that after I quit driving for the captain, I got promoted to wrecker operator, and I was a 5-ton wrecker operator.
Okay.
And it had a big swivel boom on it. You just take the boom stabilizers down and you could turn it in a 90-degree circle, and I used to help the krauts out, I'd say. I'd be going out to the field because I got to come in every night when we were out, which was quite often. And if there was somebody standing alongside the road because the car went over the road, they'd stop me and then ask me if I would help them get up out of there. And I said, 20 bucks. For $20, I just drop my stabilizers, swing the hook over, grab them, and I said, "You hook it up." And I pick it up like a wet noodle and set them on the road and get my money and go.
Perfect.
But that's what I did when I was over there.
How long were you over there? 27 months.
27 or 28 months.
And they told him
What?
if he would extend...
I sent her and my daughter home.
What year was that?
1967.
Yeah, we come home in 1967.
Or might have been 66
Six?
because I went to, this is where the screw me came in.
Okay, now just make us start over.
Back from Germany, they sent me, I had a paper that said that I was going to be discharged
90 days early.
90 days early because I extended over there and I had less than 90 days to go, so they were going to give me what they called a 90-day early out. And I had that letter. We come back to United States. We unloaded. We went into this airport hangar, and there was 3 lines: an emergency leave, ETS, and a reassignment. I thought, well, I just go get in the getting out line or discharge line. I stood there for probably an hour at least waiting my turn. Got up there and gave the lady my name and everything, and she starts looking through the file and she says, "I'm sorry, specialist, I don't have no orders for you." I said, "What do you mean you don't have any?" And I reached in my pocket and I gave her this letter, and it says right there, I get out, a 90-day early out. It's from the government. The president does this. She says, "Well, it's probably just misplaced." So she asked one of the other women in line. Person says, "Nope, I don't have nothing." The other one says, "Maybe it's an emergency leave." So they checked with that one. Pretty soon the lady down there hollers, says, "Oh, is it John R.M.A. RA 1680 5510? "Yeah, that's it." She says, "Oh, yeah, it says here that you're going to Fort Carson, Colorado." I said, "Like hell I am." I said, "I got a 90-day early out. Right there's my paper. It says so. That's from the government." It says, "Yeah, it says right here. If you don't report by such and such, you're AWOL." So, obviously, my wife and I went to Fort Carson, Colorado. I told her, I said, "We'll just call this our honeymoon." And that's about what it was.
How long were you there?
90 days?
Yep, 90 days. They paid for me, my wife, and if I wanted to move furniture and stuff, they'd have had to pay for that.
But we didn't. We just went.
But we just was going to rent for 90 days because I knew I was getting out, but they didn't seem to understand that. And we got out. I had a bunch of leave time passed or built up. When Charlene came to Germany, everything we had was a house, trailer, and a car. And we didn't have the car because she got in an accident before she came over
Oh,
and totaled the
didn't have
car,
to
so we
tell
didn't
them
even
that.
have a car.
You didn't have to tell them that.
But anyhow, my brother was a car dealer, so when she came home, her and my brother went to the auto auction and bought us a car, but never told me what it was. Well, when I came home from Germany and they picked me up at Toledo at the airport, I said, "Where's our car?" Because nobody's ever told me yet what kind of, and I've been a little snicker about what I drive. Pretty soon we're walking along and she stopped. I said, "What's the matter?" "We're there." I said, "You mean we're there? Where?" "Right there's your car." I said, "A 1973 Thunderbird?" "You gotta be kidding." She said, "No, that Norm said that'd make you a nice car." Obviously, I wasn't impressed with it. I got to Fort Carson, Colorado. 90 days later, when I got out, I got a good hunk of change. So I took my little Thunderbird and I traded it on a SS 396 66 Chevelle.
there you go.
But Rhine River.
Okay, but did you do any sightseeing? Did any special
No.
activities?
Nope, it's
You didn't have money.
it's sorry to say I didn't have no money.
I know.
I've had several people. What upset me, I've had a lot of people tell me they throw Vietnam up in my face, and I've always been sour about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I gave the government 3 years of my life to
Yep.
do with what they wanted,
Yep.
and then they sent me to Germany. I didn't tell them no.
Yep.
I went.
Yep.
And then when I come back, people act like I shouldn't be up here at that Legion because that's for Vietnam vets. That's Vietnam.
You served.
If I hadn't been for me being in Germany, one of them people that was in Vietnam would have been over there.
Yep.
But
Yep.
that's in the past. I've
Yep.
done what I've done. I served my country.
Yep.
My son went in. My youngest son went in. He was in the Army. My oldest son, he went into the Navy right from school. He served 26 years in the Navy. He got out without a year and got a job working for a private contractor at Oceana, Virginia Beach. And then that's where he served. He served 15 years in the same
Capacity.
building that he's working in now.
Crazy.
And he's still there. He's still working for the Navy.
Wow.
So the maids have done their share.
That's right. That's right.